I'm actually pretty excited to be able to make this video about this new pulse arc welder that Pepe Tools was nice enough to send over. And you might have seen these around, seeing that they are used to make permanent jewelry, but that's definitely not the only thing you can use this for. So in this video I'm going to go over unboxing and setting this whole thing up and showing you what it can do. And everything showed up in these two boxes. And the larger box in the back is actually a canister of argon gas, which actually doesn't come with the kit and it's optional, but I'll make sure to cover that later in the video. But anyways, this one box actually has two boxes inside of it because I have the starter set, and it comes with a lot of extra materials and tools. But if you just want the welder itself, that is an option, and you can source all the other parts elsewhere. And right on top of everything, there's a quick start guide that will go over the basics of everything, and the other box has the entire welder setup inside of it, which is nicely packed in some custom cut foam. And as you can see with this in my hand, this is a pretty small setup, and you can see that the welder's handpiece is permanently attached to the welder itself. There's also two grounding alligator clips in the box, but here's a closer look at the main unit of the helix welder itself, which looks like a very simple setup, and the whole thing is made out of metal. And you can see the back of this is pretty simple, with everything nicely labeled. And here's a better look at the handpiece, and this is all metal as well. And like I said, this is pretty much permanently attached to your welding unit, but this isn't really a problem. And this hose is actually pretty flexible. This also has wiring going through it, and how your argon gas gets to the tip of this. And when it comes to the other box, there's a ton of things in here as you can see, and I'm not going to waste your time taking it out one by one, so here it is all laid out. And you can see there's a decent amount of stuff here. And even though the starter kit doesn't come with the argon canister, it does come with the regulator and the hose for it. It also came with an assortment of 20 feet of chain that's cut into 5 feet lengths. And these are gold filled and sterling silver. And along with that, it comes with 100 jump rings in those two same materials. It's always nice to have materials to start making things right out of the box. And of course, you're not just limited to these two materials. This will also work with any carat of gold, silver, stainless steel, platinum, copper, and even aluminum. And this does come with a few cleaning products, because when you're welding things, you want it to be as clean as possible, and then afterwards you want to clean it off as well. There's also some nice flush cutters included, that way you can easily cut this supply chain to size, or other thin metals. There's also two sets of eye protection, which you really should use when using the welder, seeing that this will damage your eyes. And this does come with a stand or holder for your handpiece, which can come in handy for certain setups, or if you just need an extra hand. But anyways, let's get things all set up, and it's all pretty straightforward. You just need to plug in your power cable, and if you are going to be using the argon setup, it just plugs in right here where it says gas, and it just kind of slides in until it stops. And you can always pull on it a little bit to make sure it doesn't come out, and you should be good to go. And this does come with an assortment of grounding cables, some that you can just clip onto your piece, or a full-on set of pliers. And these just plug in here at the top of the machine with the plus symbol. And if you want multiple of these set up at the same time, you can plug them into one another. And you will have to connect one of these to whatever piece you're going to be welding, so you can complete the circuit. That being said, we still need to set up our handpiece. And to do that, we need to pull off this end piece. That way we can get to this brass piece in the middle, which is a collet, and it's going to hold our electrode. And you just need to unscrew it a little bit to open it up. And this setup does come with 5 pre-sharpened electrodes. And they are sharpened to the point that you can actually prick your finger with these, so be careful. And you just want to slide the electrode into the collet with the sharp end pointing out. And leave a decent amount of this sticking out, but we still need to adjust this to the proper length, and we're going to be using the end of the handpiece to do this. And we just want the tip of the electrode to line up with the bottom of this groove. And you're going to be resting the bottom of the handpiece on this part of the collet. And just carefully slide the electrode down. And once you have it in place, just tighten up the collet, and then you can put the end of the handpiece back on. And if you do it this way, your electrode should be sticking out exactly how much it needs to be, which should be about 1 millimeter to 1.5 millimeters. And now this is pretty much completely ready to use. And for now, I'm just going to put it into its holder, because now I need to set up the argon part of this. And with new canisters like this one, they usually have a plug in it that needs to be removed. And just using a pair of pliers to pull on the tab will usually make quick work of this. And this is when you need that regulator that came with the kit. Setting this up is pretty straightforward, just put the end of this into the canister, and then just thread in this large hex part. And it's best to go slow with this, and do it by hand at first, just to make sure you're not cross-threading anything and you won't have any leaks. And like I said before, this is completely optional. Argon is known as an inert gas, and all that really means is it's non-reactive, unlike water and oxygen, which is found in the air. And this basically just makes a little shield around where you're welding, and this will result in better welds and more consistent welds. But once you have everything hand tight, you can tighten this up with a wrench, and you plug in the other end of that hose right here. And just like before, push it in until it stops, and then pull on a little bit to make sure it doesn't slide out. But if you do need to take it out for some reason, all you have to do is push on this piece and pull the tube out. But with all that done, we can finally open up the canister itself, and as I'm doing this, you can see that one of the gauges start moving. And this is telling you the pressure of the canister. And this other gauge is how much pressure you're letting out through the regulator. And you're going to be controlling all of this with this knob here, which should be very loose like this when it's completely closed. So you're going to want to start turning this in the plus direction, and you just want to set this to around 7 liters per minute. And with that all done, this is ready to use. So with all that set up, we can finally turn this on with this switch on the back, and you'll see the front display turn on. But this doesn't fully turn on the unit. You also need to push the on button on the front, and you'll see the ready light turn on. And this display number on the front is actually how many joules or how much power you're going to be using. And you can raise and lower this using the plus and minus buttons on the front. And you're going to have to use different amounts of power, and this will depend on the material you're using and how big or small it is. And if you're wondering why this charge light isn't on, it's because we haven't activated anything yet. And to do this, all you need to do is touch your grounding tool to the end of the electrode. And if you just touch this to the electrode for a second, you can hear it make a beep noise. And if you leave it there for another second connected like this, it'll activate the welder and make a weld. And again, before you do any welding, make sure you have eye protection on, because this is extremely bright and will damage your eyes. And for my first example, I'm just going to use one of these sterling silver jump rings. And I find the best power setting for this jump ring is about 6 joules. And all you need to do is hold this using one of your grounding clips and touch it to the electrode. And there we go, and in about a second, this jump ring is now welded shut. So now let's actually use some of the chain that comes with this and make a permanent bracelet. And we're going to be using the silver chain that I've already cut to length with a little bit of extra on it. And this way you'll have some slack to adjust it for whoever you're making it for, and make sure it's going to be comfortable for them, unless you want to cut it off and do it again. And you're only going to need one jump ring to make this bracelet, but I'm also going to be adding this charm, so I'm going to need a second one. And when it comes to this charm, I actually made it kind of custom on the spot from one of these blank ones. And being able to offer this will add a lot of value to your work as well. But when it comes to the tool that I'm using to do it, it's the X-Tool F1, which is a very portable laser setup. On top of that, it can mark on just about any metal. And I think the software is pretty simple to use. And I'll show you really quick how I did this, in case you're interested. I used the text tool and typed in the letter I wanted to use, and changed it to a nice looking font, and made a duplicate of it as well. The one that's all solid will be a filled in engraving, and the other one is just going to outline everything. And then I align them together so they stack on top of one another, and depending on the material that you're going to be engraving on, they have a drop down list of a bunch of different presets. And with that all set up, I can tell the laser to trace this image, that way I can see exactly where it's going to be, and align my charm with it. And all that's left to do is start the laser engrave, and this is actually it working in real time. And in total, this took about 6 seconds. So definitely not bad for something being custom made on the spot. And like I said previously, this does add a lot of value to what you're doing. And if you're not familiar with jump rings, they're just small unconnected rings that you can bend open and connect things to one another, just like what I'm doing with this charm. And now if I take the chain and put it in here as well, I can then bend this jump ring closed and everything is connected. And normally you're going to want to use a second pair of pliers to do this. But even though you close the jump ring, this is still your weakest link, and for the most part can easily be opened up again on accident. And just so you can see it better, here's a bigger jump ring. And you can see when we close it up, there's a small gap here. And you're going to want to make sure to get this as tight as possible before welding. So here's the bracelet already on the person's wrist, and the jump ring has already been bent closed. And you can see the little bit of extra chain on here as well. And how I have it set right now is comfortable, and it's not going to fall off. And it has about 1 finger of slack in it. And because we're going to be welding this on someone, I'm going to be using a small piece of leather to put between where I'm welding and their skin. And this also gives us a nice work area by keeping the chain kind of tight. And all I need to do now is hold my jump ring using my grounding pliers and touch the electrode to the open part of the jump ring. And after about a second, the welder will activate, and now that gap in the jump ring has been fused together. And after doing a weld, you want to clean this up because it will leave a little bit of residue, but you can make quick work of this just using the scratch brush that came with the kit. After that, you just need to remove the excess chain, and this can be done quickly with the included flush cutters. And that's how quick and easy you can do permanent jewelry, using this very simple setup. But you're not limited to just doing permanent jewelry. This can also be used as a spot welder for other jewelry pieces. So as an example, if you use one of my templates to make a bail like this one, you can easily shape it into its usable bail form, and without any soldering setup whatsoever, you can easily just weld the end of this together, which only takes about a second as you can see, and only requires very minimal cleanup for it to look perfect. So a major time saving over soldering pieces together. And this can come in really handy if you're working on something that has stones in it that are heat sensitive. And on top of that, this takes up a very small footprint, so you can easily keep this on a small jeweler's bench. And it's pretty much ready to go at any time, so if you need to tack something together, you can at any moment, with no extra setup or mess. You can also use this in the process of making full-on pieces of jewelry. So let me show you how I would make some stud earrings using this. And I'm going to use a disc cutter to make perfect circles really quick, and I'll be making all of it out of this piece of sterling silver that I have. And if you've never used a disc cutter before, they're pretty simple. You just put your metal inside of it and line it up with whatever size hole you need, and use a little bit of cutting lubricant on the actual cutting part, and just kind of drop this in the hole. Also make sure to tighten this down on the metal, or things won't work right. And using a brass mallet, you can just knock this through. And there you go, you have a perfect circle every time. And you can also use this to easily make moon shapes. And of course, you're not limited to just using a disc cutter. You can use a template to draw something out, or you can freehand something and cut it out using a jeweler's saw. Basically whatever flat shape you want. And of course, you can always use these to make your own custom charms. You would just need to drill a hole through them, so you can attach them to a jump ring. But whatever you decide to use, you're going to have to attach some sort of post to them to actually make them earrings. And I'll be using these sterling silver ones. And you can eyeball the placement of these, or if if you want them completely center, you can always use a center finder. This way you can mark the back of it and know exactly where center is. And when it comes to marking round objects, all you need to do is mark the back, and then rotate it 90 degrees and mark it again to make a cross. All pretty simple stuff. And this could be useful for a lot of different applications. And for these pieces, I'm going to be upping the power a little bit to 15 joules. And when doing these welds, you probably want to do this on a non-conductive surface. So like a wooden bench pin, or even just a scrap of leather. So using my grounding pliers, I'm going to hold the post, and then just touch my electrode to the point where both of the pieces of metal are touching. And for this, I'm going to do it in 4 spots. That should be more than enough to keep this attached. And of course, this isn't the only way to do this. You can solder this on using a torch. But doing it this way is definitely a lot quicker and easier to clean up. And to clean this up, all I have to do is use a scratch brush on the back. And that's pretty much it. And if you wanted to do it even quicker, you can use a rotary tool. But I do think this is a very simple way to make stud earrings. And you could pretty much do this anywhere. And this brings me to the portability of all this. You can pretty much use this anywhere if you have a simple battery pack like this one to run it. So if you wanted to go to an event so you can do permanent jewelry and it has no power, then problem solved. And the crazy part to me is that you can run your Xtool F1 off of this same battery pack. So you'd be able to make custom engravings as well. And both of these use very little power when they're running, so you should be able to get a lot done off of one charge of this battery pack. And if you're interested in any of the stuff I showed in this video, I have links to everything in the description below. So there's a lot of things that this can be used for other than just permanent jewelry, as you can see. And being able to work with thicker metals or even finer metals with the same precision is pretty nice. And on top of that, these are very strong joints. Overall, this is a great addition to just about any setup. But with that being said, this is not a cheap tool. And if you're looking to get the same setup that I have, it's about $1,650. And if you just get the welder itself without the starter set, you're looking at about $1,400. And of course, these are the prices as I'm recording this video, so they might change later. And like I said, definitely not a cheap tool, but very helpful. But I do honestly think this is well worth the money if you can utilize it properly to make money from it. But those are just my thoughts on this, and I'll definitely be using this a lot more in my future videos. And I do want to know what you think about this setup, so leave a comment below. Well, I think that sums up everything, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.